Hello again everyone, Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube video segment, I'm going to be paying tribute and eulogizing, in my opinion, someone I felt was a really great man. And the name of the person is James Till. He was my grandfather, he was my maternal grandfather, and he really acted like a surrogate father to me. He was very kind, very magnanimous and generous. There was virtually nothing he wouldn't do for somebody. And whether it was charging somebody's car up with battery somebody needed a jump start, or whether it was like fixing a flat for my bicycle, I mean, he was basically a jack of all trades. And his life was really, I think, defined by selfless giving and humanitarianism. And even though he's long gone, he left an indelible impact and impression on my life that I'll never forget. And one of the things I do regret with him is that I felt like our relationship and rapport could have been better. We were diametrically opposed on certain issues, and especially as far as like religion went, and he was very religious and I wasn't, and I think sadly I may have disgraced him because of it. I'd like to hope that who I've become now, if he's looking down on me, he'd be proud of. I guess our creator only knows the answer to that. I can remember one time he said, "Hey Eddie, I'd fight to the death for you," and that really did my heart good. It made me feel, so proud to have him as my grandfather. I didn't show it a lot. I lived with in his house for many years, many months. I didn't even pay rent. I felt like, at least on a subconscious level, maybe I took advantage of his good disposition and his kindness. I know now through maturation and the fact I'm older, that I'm middle-aged right now, I recognize more, I think now, what he did for me and the positive things that he did for me and how beneficial and advantageous his existence really was to me. Sometimes you really don't understand the value of somebody, unfortunately, until they've dissipated, until they've left your life. And unfortunately, it's for some people, including myself, it can be too late, because I didn't feel like I really honored him the way maybe I should have. Don't get me wrong, not that he was somebody exalted or anything like that, but you understand what I'm saying. Perhaps I should have had more respect for him. And that's one of the regrets I do have to this day. And when I look at him, as I stated before, he helped somebody one time with charging their car up. Somebody needed a jump start, and they asked him if they could recompense him and give him any money for his efforts, and he just said no, he wasn't going to take the money. And I don't think that was an act or a facade to impress me. I think that's just what he was about. He struck me as somebody that was the opposite of avaricious and greedy. He was very much about giving and not worried about reciprocation from the other end. And I can remember some really good times with him. I can remember, when I reminisce, going down in the basement with him when I was little. We'd paint together. Some of you may remember this, older people out there. I don't know if he's still around or not, and I don't remember his name, but there was a guy that was like on a PBS station, and he said something about the magic white, and he was referring to some special white paint, I guess. And that resonates in me for a while. That's really something that I really remember very strongly, and I can laugh at that, and I got a kick out of that. Every time I think about that, it's like I laugh out loud, really. And then other times we'd be there, and he'd be showing me some slides on a film, one of those older projection TVs, which I kind of refer to as like an enlarged version of a Viewmaster. I don't know how many of you remember the Viewmaster, if it's still around, but many of you may know what I'm referring to. And we'd go for bicycle rides together. He'd play basketball with me. And it was just like, it was like having a simulated father, because many of you may know from other videos, I've talked about my father before, and I don't recollect him because he died when I was 3 years old, died of some insidious cancer. You might have heard of it, called Hodgkin's disease. Another thing, my grandfather was also somebody of immense fortitude, courage, and valor. He stood only 5'5" and weighed about 160 pounds. But as far as his character and who he was as a person, I mean, he may have been diminutive in stature, but to me, perhaps than any other man I ever knew, he stood taller, or stood the tallest. There was one moment in 1947 when he plunged into the intrepid waters of the Long Island Sound, and many of you may know that's in New York, and a plane had crashed, and he jumped in, risked his own life, and saved somebody from that plane. Unfortunately, 4 other people had perished, but he did save someone. And he also had a problem, like with his foot, or foot area, and that kept him from the. He was trying to join the services, I believe it was in World War II, and he was rejected because of that problem he had. But later on, those people that applied due to some law or bill passed by Congress that allowed those people to actually be members. So he was officially a member of the services at that time, well, at a later point in time, even though they didn't approve him at the time he initially applied. He was approved at a later date. Now, another thing, when I look at him, and just for being able to stand so tall and not be of great physical stature, I mean, to me, that was really unbelievable. And I think when I look at him now, the one thing was, he might have gotten mad fairly quickly at certain things, I felt. He had a very blunt and outspoken personality as well. But he didn't strike me as a vengeful or vindictive person, and he had the forgive and forget mentality and philosophy, and I thought that was very good. And the thing, when I look back, I look at our relationship, and at times it was somewhat contentious, and we didn't always get along or see eye to eye on matters, and I do have certain regrets. I understand lamenting over something like this. It's not going to change the past. We all have to proceed and move forward. But we'd be inhuman if we just said, well, we weren't ever going to remember the negative moments. It's my grandmother said at one time, she said, Eddie, I don't remember her exact words, but she basically conveyed that I needed to accentuate the positive and don't reflect on the negative, because it's just going to eat away at you, essentially. Thing about him too was that, I mean, I told you before about there were a number of months I didn't even pay rent where I was staying at. And he could have, I mean, he could have rationalized throwing me out. He really could have. And he didn't. And they kept me there. Him and my grandmother kept me there in spite of all that. He was about forgiveness, about compassion, about selfless giving, about being charitable. He worked religiously, and I don't think there was any pay in this. He had done some help for the homeless, and I believe the place was stationed in Hempstead, New York. People that are in the United States or Northeast area in New York, you may have heard of that town called Hempstead. And I think it was like 5 days a week. He worked there from like 9 to 5 or something, and I mean, this was after retirement. I mean, this man was about work, working laboriously, working hard. And this was from the time from his like early to mid 60s till 71 years old. He didn't know the word quit. His energy was inexorable. I never saw somebody at his age have that much energy in them. I mean, it was just uncanny. It was something that, like, almost like a specimen. I couldn't believe it. Well, people, I'll close with that. And what I want to, one last thing I want to say is, Grandpa, I hope you see this right now. and tell you that I love you. I'm sorry for any wrongdoings, any transgressions, any or disagreements in the past. Things shouldn't have been said. I do miss you greatly, and I believe I will see you again one day. Well, everyone, this is Edwin Learnard. Until next time, people, stay well.